Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys doing today?
Hope you guys are having an awesome Sunday. And as always, thank you so much for spending the next hour with us, however you're watching us, wherever you're watching us. So today we have a good one. I guess it's something that Donnie, and you and I haven't really spoken about very often. I may have, in the years that we've been working together, it may have come up every once in a while. But I guess I never really thought about extinct family lines being important because I don't descend from them. They're like, they're always cousin lines. So I've noted, when I'm reading about family histories and finding out, oh, this male line went extinct, or this female line went extinct, or an entire line went extinct, I just kind of absorbed that information and kept it rolling. It's like, well, that's clearly not my line. It's like I know I'm genetically connected to this family, but clearly these aren't my people. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this is kind of tying this whole conversation into how we can note these lines in our trees and how we can kind of work with them or, make it easier for people to skip over those lines when they're trying to figure out genetically who they're descended from. And then you started talking about um, the situation in your family, which got me talking about the situation in mine, meaning that
Right.
if my, three times great grandfather, Daniel Henry Sheffey, as far as we know, his line is gone. You have to go up to his father and take a look at the other brothers to Daniel Henry Sheffey. Their male lines continue. So if people are looking for a YDNA test, say a generation or two from now, within my immediate family, they're going to have to go to a cousin to get it
Right.
because my dad's not, that line is gone.
Well, I think the first way of that we can approach this is first to explain to them because a lot of people, even though I mean, like I told you before, I am not the science guy, and I am just I'm not the science guy. And I to the point where I can honestly say to you all that I failed biology in college. I did, and I
Same
passed
here.
it. I did. I passed it in high school with maybe a C, maybe only. And the only reason why I say C because my mom was like, "You can't get less than a C in my household," and so I'm gonna say that I passed it with a C, and that's what we're gonna say. We're gonna say that, even though that might be a lie, but I didn't. But the one thing that I think that people need to understand is that in biology, when you got the XX chromosomes and the XY chromosomes and what they are, that's the male, that's the female and the male. I think we need to really approach that part first to let people understand this is where genetics come in and the DNA
Mhm.
and the gene, and most importantly the story of the man being the head over and why,
Mhm.
like it really can point that out.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I did forget. We were going to discuss this at the top of the show. It is not in any, we do not, Donnie and I, in any way, because we are like everybody's ally. We are not in any way dissing or dismissing transsexual people. But in this particular episode, we will be using male and female because we are talking about YDNA, which is inherited from male to male, and mitochondrial DNA, which people will recognize as mtDNA, which is passed from mothers to daughters, also mothers to sons, but males don't pass it on. Um, so we are going to be using the kind of traditional standard terminology. So back to you, Donya, so you can continue your thought.
I'm glad you said that. Okay. Thank you for saying that. And no, we are, yes, we are everybody's ally. But overall, the the discovery of the fact that men and women, I'm sorry guys, my phone is turned on and I hope y'all didn't hear that. Um, the the thing about the double X and the XY chromosomes, first and foremost, men decide whether a woman is going to have a male or a female. This is something I swear to God, I did not learn this while I was in high school or college. I learned this doing this. And if I did learn it in high school or college, I forgot. I'm just keeping it honest. So men decide whether women have a girl or a
Well,
boy.
it's the male contribution to the reproductive miracle that
Right.
decides. Yes, that decides.
Exactly. That decides it. And you can say that. I still say it the same way, but whatever. The thing is that
Well,
the
it's not that
decision lies in. Go ahead.
I'm just saying it that way so it doesn't sound like men are sitting there thinking, while the experience is happening, oh, this, well, they may do. I don't know. I want a boy. But that's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. I was just
Right.
phrasing it that way, to not so the people weren't thinking, oh, men are actually deciding what the gender of the baby's going to be.
I mean, genetically speaking, they are, because
Yeah.
if they drop an X chromosome along with
Hmm.
if a woman has two X's and the man always has an XY, when a woman drops her egg, she's going to always drop an X egg.
Yeah.
But when a man drops his egg, he's going to either drop an X or a Y. So the bottom line is, genetically speaking, men are the deciding of what a child is
Yeah.
going to be, whether
Yeah.
the
The
child is
deciding
going to
factor.
be. Right. They're the deciding factor of what a child is going to be, male or female. And that's where we are coming in as far as genetics is concerned. The mitochondria, which is the X chromosome, the YDNA, which is the Y chromosome. So, with that being said, a man can have mitochondrial DNA and YDNA, but he cannot pass his mitochondrial DNA to his female daughter. He's
Yeah.
unable to do that because that mitochondrial DNA comes from woman to woman only. So it's from the X of a female to the next X of a female to the next. That's how that goes. Whereas a man, even though he gets his mother's X DNA, he can't pass it on. But he can take those mitochondrial tests like a female can. I know it sounds confusing, but that's literally what it is. A female, however, cannot take the YDNA test because we don't have YDNA. We can figure out who our father is. We do have our father's DNA within us, but we do not share that Y to Y to Y line. So
Mhm. And
that's the genetic side.
and it is complicated, but there are plenty of excellent books on the subject out there. I mean, Blaine Bettinger has a whole DNA testing and all those kind of things explained kind of book. I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name, but I just know her as the legal genealogist. She has a book where all of this is really explained. Roberta Estes has written
Yes.
volumes on this. There's the ISOG, the ISOGG website, the International something something of Genetic Genealogy, Society of
Mm-hmm.
Genealogy. They have whole art just if you want to go online, look those up. Explains inheritance patterns, mitochondrial DNA, YDNA, how that's passed down, all that kind of stuff. Plus, what Donnie was talking about, the XX and the XY chromosomes, brilliantly explained. Loads and loads of information. There's even a chapter about it in my book about how
Yes.
to research your family's history in 50 steps. So there's a
Yes.
lot of information out there about it. But
And
appreciate that it is a complicated and it's a difficult thing.
legal
Um,
genealogist's name is Judy Russell.
thank you. Thank you very
No,
much.
thank AE. She did that.
Thank you, AE. So there's that. Um, so again, this is going to come into play when we talk about how you can incorporate all of this in your family tree in a bit, because I think your realization and the whole subject matter was really interesting. That's what got us talking about this. I can't even remember what you were. It was something to do with DNA testing, finding someone to do a DNA test because there was a NPE that had popped up out of the blue. And then, or did you already know that there was an issue with your mtDNA being passed down before that point?
I didn't know about my mtDNA. I knew about my mother's father's DNA. That one I've known about for a very long time. It's very it's only about, I think, a person coming from a very large family like mine's. My immediate family is large, and we're not talking about the whole 15,000 people that I know of that are definitely collected. Just my immediate family is like 600-700 people. that's immediate. Those are my first. I have like 75 first cousins, so on, like that. And when I look into that, there are only 10 men in my family that can carry my grandfather's name, his name and his DNA. Yeah.
True. Well, again, that's popped up in even within my Sheffy clan. There are male Sheffys, but not all of us are. Not all of them are Y carrying Sheffys.
Right.
They
Right.
just adopted the
Right.
name because they like it. It's just kind of one of those things. But in terms of trying to figure out our genealogy, and again, this is it's an important thing for everyone, especially everyone's got at least a brick wall that they struggle with breaking through. But we know that African Americans, we have to rely on DNA and genetic genealogy more heavily than other people because of just the history of our ancestry. So, for instance, what kind of got me on this trip was when I was researching our Edgefield Holloways. That is a very complicated family to research. It's huge with loads of repeating names, lots of misinformation out there. The two lineage books that are out there have huge, like the Settles book, just
Yes.
huge issues, very, very wrong. So I just did completely original research. So again, taking them from Edgefield to the correct part of Virginia, building out that tree, because I was determined, and you remember this was about 5 or 6 years ago, I was going to find who our white male Holloway ancestor was, because we just had way too many DNA matches to be able to do that. Well, I took the line all the way back to England and then started building it out from there. And I remember one line in particular, I must have spent 3.5 weeks researching this entire line coming out of Kent County, Virginia, that became extinct. It became extinct about between 1815 and 1820. I don't have the exact year on that one. Those weeks could have been better spent, building out the branches that hadn't gone extinct. Because remember, the whole point was to do all this triangulation with as many white descended Holloways that I could identify out of my matches to put them in their correct place in the tree to start the triangulation and the segmentation process. So I was miffed. I'm like, really? All of the stuff that's been written about this family, no one bothered to say that this line went extinct. No one's noted it in their tree. And that's when I started noting this in my tree. And I believe we have one queued up to go. That's Mr. Jope.
Okay, let me.
I'm going to get him up myself. So as you're getting that up, I'll explain who this is.
Oh, it's up. It's up.
Oh, it's up. Okay. Oh, there he is. Can you click on his actual profile page? Thank you. There we go. So people can actually see how I handle it. So as many of you know who've been watching the show over the years, that I descend from a lot of the people who were either the early Africans of Virginia, mostly from Angola, but that I also descend from a lot of the white families that settled Jamestown proper, but also had plantations all up and down the James River. And I had these curious Jope matches, but they were always in England, and they were always in two specific places, Devon and Cornwall, and they were going way back in time. And I'm like, Jope, where do I know this name? Well, one of the captains that brought the first group of enslaved Africans into the James River area, he was a Jope. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Now remember, he's a slave ship captain. They're enslaved, there are Angolan women on that ship. And this has never been documented. I've been having a really interesting conversation with Catherine Knight about this. And obviously I had to build out the Jope tree. And I'm glad I did it because at least I know that there was no Jope from England, from southern England, that was in the colonies. The first one to actually immigrate to the United States didn't even do so until the 1920s, and he immigrated to Boston. So I'm like, where does this crazy DNA come from? Well, come to find out, it is from the captain. That's because I spent all this time building out his family tree back in England using British resources to do it. And then this is when I started noting, this was after the Holloway mess. So I started noting lines that had gone extinct. If anyone else had to ever do anything on this Jope line who had DNA back to this English family, but we're always, we're here in the United States for a long time, going back to the colonial period, they would know to skip over Robert Jope. There's no point researching him or his descendants if you're looking for a YDNA line, because there are no males in his line that are alive. His male line just went completely extinct. So this is how I note it. I probably use the suffix. This tree is much more of a research tree. It is a family tree, but it's also a research tree. And I know a lot of researchers actually access it. So one, that's to remind me that there's no YDNA that's kicking around amongst Robert Jope's descendants. But it's also letting other researchers know, if this is what you're looking for, if you're looking for YDNA matches in the Jope family, this line's not going to help you. Go to one of the other lines.
So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What if, and we know that this happens, they don't listen to that and they continue? Have you come across a moment where you had to challenge someone in this particular tree that they were saying that this person was a son of him, when in actuality you had proof that they weren't?
Well, the caveat is, this is the one thing that makes me nervous about doing it. Robert, there were no legitimate male children after a certain point in this line. At a certain point, it all just ends in girls, so that Y line goes. But there's not to say that somewhere in this line between 17, he started having kids in 1742, between 1742 and about 1820, that someone could have had a natural born son, who may or may not have the Jope name, whose male line continues, but that won't reveal itself until there's a DNA match.
So then I have another question, because looking at this particular tree, he does have one son.
No, I'm saying the male line ends about 1820. So I did all of this research between 1742 and 1820. That took about 2 to 2.5 weeks to do. Mm-hmm. And if I had known that there was no male line from this after a certain point, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just skipped over this line entirely and just moved on to one of Robert's brothers.
Right, because you actually placed up here that his line only continues through his daughter. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to point out to everybody.
Yeah, so it's not that he doesn't have descendants that are alive today. There are no living descendant of Robert's carries that Jope YDNA.
That YDNA. Mm-hmm. So that means that when you do your DNA, your ancestry, your 23andMe, MyHeritage, what have you, and you try to do a mitochondrial DNA, there's not going to, a paternal DNA on this particular line, there's not going to be one to do. They can't, there's nobody that's going to be able to do that for them, because there's no Y person there. That's what that means. Okay.
And again, it's also a reminder to me, because I can't always remember the specifics about every single line of my tree has, I'm knocking at about 300,000 people now. Right. I can't remember the specifics of every one of those lines. Normally, the ones I do remember is if there's like a really amazing story in there somewhere, or it's my immediate line. I know my immediate line's like the back of my hand. Or unless it was like really gnarly to research. Like your Yeldell lines. Yeah. I know every one of those Yeldell lines because they're just really difficult to research.
And I just want to say I'm sorry that you know every last one.
But something like the Jope family, which was a one-off piece of research for me to try to figure out why I had this crazy DNA that I couldn't explain. And I just wasn't finding Jopes in the United States. I just wasn't finding them. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And I think that was like 5.1 cm. It was the tiny, tiny little sliver that was in there. but I had the Joe, and then I had the female line coming off of the family, and that kind of sealed the deal. And on a side note, this is a weird one. You know that for the last 15 years that I lived in the United Kingdom, I lived in Cornwall. Well, Callington was just 45 minutes up the road from where I lived, and South Hill was about a 20-minute drive from where I lived. I've been to both of those places. So
Wow.
I literally walked in the steps of where my ancestors walked without even realizing. This was before I knew. This was before I even realized I had Jope DNA. I was already walking in the footsteps of the ancestors.
Okay. Well, I guess the next thing that we can go into is the female line. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna show we're gonna show my particular line at that point. And the female now for me, my female line is not gone completely. Is that my mommy? But my mom's line can disappear. She has it has the potential of disappearing. So this is my mother Juanita, and I'm going to go to her profile so that you can see better. This is my mom. This is Juanita Yeldell, and this is her mother, Annie Mae. And what we're talking about is that X to X. So basically, it actually Annie's mother is this lady, Lula Peterson. So it's going from Lula to Annie right there, to my mom who's at the bottom. She's the 14th child. And from my mother to me, and then from me to my daughter. And none of my children have children, but my daughter would be the one to continue the actual line of my mom. And this is us right here. So I'm gonna show you guys us. I'm sorry, this just did not pull the way I wanted to. So you gotta reshare, sorry.
While you're doing that, because someone did say, even my sister teases me. She's like, "Well, it's not too late." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm knocking on 60 for me to like purposely go out to just to try to have one son, who's no guarantee that he would actually be able to carry on the family line either." It's like, yeah, I need a night nurse because I am not getting up at 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning for bottle feeding or nappy changing. Mm-mm.
Yeah, you go right on ahead with that. I done ended that life. And this is our line. So this is Lula Peterson, Annie Mae Sr., my wonderful and beautiful mother, Juanita, me, and then my daughter. If my daughter doesn't have a child or a girl, to be precise, then my daughter is going to end all of their lines. And just to be even more frank, if my daughter doesn't have a child, she's going to end it from my mother's, because my mom has other siblings, had sisters who had daughters, and their lines are still going as well. But as far as my mom is concerned, there will be no more people coming from going all the way back to both of the wives from Moses Williams, of Moses Williams. There will be nobody else. So this right here, this picture that I showed my mom, when she saw this, she was like, how did that happen? And I explained it to her, and this is why we're doing the show today, because I showed her this picture. So it's really exciting to realize and to learn where your lines is going to end, where they're not going to end. And then it became even more exciting when Brian was talking about memorializing them and talking about them. So right now for me, I actually can't do a memorial, memorialize them, because technically it's still going on. Technically, the lines are still carrying. Um, but I am loving how to do it. And I think that that is a major thing to pass on to someone who's doing the research, so that when I leave this earth, they already going to know, okay, I don't need to do any more work on Uncle Tommy, because Uncle Tommy never had a boy. So technically that is my, I have an extinct line. That's one of my lines that extinct, that is extinct from my grandfather.
And, kind of talking with my sister about ways of memorializing Daniel Henry Sheffield Jr.'s male line. Because, there were a lot of achievers in the family. And it's just kind of, it is in a way kind of really sad thinking that my brother and I are it. And it's not like his line is entirely extinct, because it continues through my sister and her kids, her grandkids, and one day her great granddaughter. And it's amazing to think that Moses Williams Sr., the elder, who was born in 1769, his wife, Miss Haygood, the first one, because that's the one that my sister descends from. Well, actually, no, we descend from both, but I'm going to stick with, she carries the mtDNA of Miss Haygood. It is crazy to think, going all that way, that that female line has gone from Miss Haygood all the way down to a little baby girl who was born 18 months ago.
Yeah,
Insane.
yeah, it is. It really it's the craziest thing to, when you really think about it. When you think about, like, everybody, most people, when they do their overall genealogical research, they do it from their grandparents. They do not go to the standpoint of those great, 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 and all, all those large numbers. Well, Miss Haygood, which is somebody that my mom descends from, Miss Haygood would be what, my mother's third or fourth great grandmother.
Third, her third.
Yeah, my mother's third great grandmother. So if that's my mom's third, we're talking about my fourth great grandmother and my daughter's fifth great grandmother. That's how far down that went. And it's just amazing. We're talking, this lady had to be, if her son was born, we know that Moses was born, not if, because I want to be clear on that one. We know that Moses was born in 1769. So this lady was born in early 1700s. So from the early 1700s to 1993, 200 years. That's amazing.
From female to female to female, all the
Yes,
way down those
yes,
generations.
yes, that is amazing.
And I
So
think that, that's something that maybe as a community we do need to think about more, and just, come up with really creative ways of being able to memorialize that and
yeah,
celebrate it.
yeah, I think we should. I think it's something that definitely should be done. I mean, when you think about it, that's what's being done in history anyway. They're always memorializing somebody when you're looking at history,
Mhm,
what it is they've done,
mhm.
how they've done it, why they've done it. They give them a statue, they give them, it could be anything, a plaque, something, this is a, memorial, this, that, all of that. I mean, I think there is my grandfather's name is etched in the side of Springfield of DC, the Springfield Baptist Church of Washington, DC. His name is etched in the side of it. That's because he was one of the founders. He was the main founder. So he's been memorialized. I think that that's how we need to start looking at those types of things. How do we continue to lift our families and let people know, this is who I came from, and this is what they did. That's what's being done all the time. Black people, people of color, everybody really needs to start getting into doing that for themselves, for their own families, for their children, so that they understand and that they know that we specifically Black people were not just enslaved folks. We did things. We were successful. We came out running, all of those different things. And Right now, I think that's what's missing in our students' lives right now, our children's lives right now, not knowing that.
No, I agree. They are important discussions to have. And I guess, again, I was kind of spoiled because I had two of my great grandmothers in my life until I was a teenager. They may not have always wanted to talk about, the old state that they came from before they rocked up to DC. Um, but I was blessed to have them in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
I
See,
knew,
and I
I knew,
never had any.
I knew who their siblings. I mean, at least I knew who their siblings were. I remember those I remember those names. One or two of them were still. I think one or two of them were still alive as well, along with her. You know, our family is either very long lived or not. And the Matthews were very long lived. Matthews were very long lived, and the Turners, come to think of it. So that was a blessing.
So I think one of the things we need to show people is exactly how you where you went to put that male extinct line, just for those that are new that may not
Hmm.
get it or whatever the case may be. So because I have, even though I'm listed as a contributor on your tree, I can't open up the profile. I can open up mine and then I can show where you actually went to do that. So what I'm getting ready to do now is
Oh,
show you
it
guys.
showed on the other one when you'd had Robert up.
Well, I mean just the no, not just the profile. You know how when you go in and you edit it, I want to show them exactly where that is.
Right,
Yeah.
got it. Well, if you bring up George Christian, if you can't do that, you should have editing rights to my tree.
No,
If you,
I don't. I don't have
oh,
editing
no.
rights. I just
Okay.
tried. Yeah, that's what made me do that. So I can show them real quick because I can
Hmm.
actually say I can mark it on mine right now. So right here is my Uncle Thomas. And my Uncle Tommy, he only had a daughter, one child, and it was a girl. So this means that he does not have any males. His male line is extinct because there are no males coming from him. So I need to just go to the quick edit on my ancestry and go to the suffix. If I go to the suffix line, this is where I will type male line extinct. That's simple.
Hmm.
And hit save, and it pops up. So now
Well, because
anybody who comes, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Mhm.
Now it says, so now anybody who comes and looks at my tree and thinks that their connection is here and it's through a male, they'll realize, no, it's not through a male for here. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Would you mind throwing up the George Christian profile?
Sure.
So this is a slightly different example. This is an example of that I marked where an entire line went extinct. So there are no living male or female descendants. It's just gone. This was another interesting piece of research. I I always knew that I connected to the really early colonial white Christian family in and around Jamestown, the whole kind of Jamestown region. First of all, Christian is just a nightmare last name to research, as you can well imagine. That certainly upped my research game. And I didn't realize we're actually teaching a little bit of genealogy today. So I was going to preface this by one of the genealogical standards of proof is you have to do an exhaustive search. And I was soon discovered an issue because, again, the American trees of Christian family descendants coming from the Isle of Man in the United Kingdom had the wrong William Christian as the father of our line in colonial America. And they all pointed to this one who you see on the screen, William McChriston, also known as William Christian, the Isle of Man, because he was I'm not going to get into why he was famous. He was just a very famous man in his lifetime. So one of the things that I had to do to disprove that the William Christian that everyone had in their tree, this one, as a matter of fact, the son of George, that's the one that everyone's put as our ancestor. So I did an exhaustive search for every single William Christian on the Isle of Man, born within 3 generations of, he was born about 1655, sorry. So within 2 to 3 generations of that I counted, because with the Christians, they constantly were naming kids. Everyone was naming their kids after fathers, grandfathers on the mother and father side. There was a gazillion Williams. And it was just curious that people decided that they wanted to be related to the William Christian that you see on the screen. So in the course of building out this massive Christian family tree from the Isle of Man, I came across, again, the George Christian, who's, again, supposed to be our direct ancestor. Well, his line went extinct. His son, William, that William never left the Isle of Man. He was born there. He died there. He never stepped foot in Virginia. He never left the United Kingdom, ever. So that was clearly documented, clearly proven. And again, this is to help anyone else who's researching the Christian family of the Isle of Man. If you need to pull information from, about descendants from the family, whether it's autosomal DNA, YDNA, mtDNA, George Christian's not going to do it for you because his whole entire line is extinct. There is no living person for you to compare your DNA to from this one. So as Donya showed you, I just did a quick edit, popped extinct line next to George Christian and just kept it cycling, kept it moving. At least this time around, it didn't take me 2 to 2.5 weeks to prove that part of the line was extinct. It was readily available from the author. So I was very, very grateful for that.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some questions, and they're very good questions. I don't know if we can answer them, but we do have questions. So A.E. Barlow, she says, how can adoptees leverage their mtDNA matches? Since I have an X from my mom and one from my dad, how can a female tell which X the match falls on? I find that to be an excellent question.
Doesn't MyHeritage, it's one of them. It's 23andMe or it's MyHeritage, or it may even be both of them. Doesn't that tell you? It's both of them. That tells you.
It's both of them. Yeah.
Got it.
It is both of them. And now Ancestry is starting to do that maternal paternal thing as well. But sure. I think one of the ways for an adoptee, because Ancestry and all of the others are starting to do that, it's going to make it easier for them to figure out which is the mother side and which is the father side. But the overall question then kicks in. But if that father side, she's asking, how can she tell if it's coming from his mom or his dad?
I would suggest GEDmatch. I know that there's some issues about privacy and what they do with the data and stuff, but they do have excellent tools that will tell you who's matching you on your paternal X and your maternal X. So
and you can also use Borland Genetics too, because they have some great tools as well. Okay, so the next question is from Joanna Irvin. She says, I'm confused. How do we know that a male line is extinct? Are we only documenting legitimate children? DNA for illegitimate children are popping up left and right.
So I want to take the first half of that. It's like anything. I spent the time going through the paper trail, probate all the usual standard documents to prove lineage using vital records and all the rest of it. That's what took that 2 to 3 weeks, is finding all of those documents to document everyone's children. Come to find out, oh, great. Like I said, around 1820, there were no males on that paper trail. The second part of that question is, I can only document the children that the paper trail is telling me about. Now, if someone pops up on DNA, then that's something that you have to pursue. That's the only reason why Donya and I have white ancestors attached to our trees as ancestors, because there was no a white enslaver, sorry, I shouldn't say, an enslaver did not document the birth of their enslaved children. Sometimes they did, but for the most part, in terms of my research, they haven't. They said an enslaved child's name may pop up in a diary. Okay, Thomas Jefferson listed his children But he didn't put that they were his children. They were just listed like any other enslaved person with their mother Sally. But we know that they're his children because of DNA, so we attach that to them. That's my only cat. That's earlier in the show. I was saying that's my only reluctance about putting that a male line is extinct. But I can only go by what the paper trail is telling me. If it turns out that they did have a natural born child, a natural born male child, um, whose line still exists, then I would have to put no legitimate, that the legitimate male line is extinct or something. I think of wording around that in some way, shape, or form. Same with the mtDNA. And again, I'm probably really bad at that. I haven't put that in my tree as much as I probably should have, but that's also equally valid. Someone
Yeah.
may have had a natural born daughter who's gone on who will have living descendants today.
And I actually can go deeper in Joanna's question because we actually had someone who popped up all of a sudden. And even though actually my mom's DNA has cured quite a few NPEs, but it's always been on the females. It's always been females not knowing that, either not knowing their father altogether or not knowing that this person was their father, that they were always reared, thinking that someone else. We had Elizabeth Wiseman on the show last season who told her story of the four fathers that she had. So I think, Joanna, when you're looking at those that's just popping up left and right, if it's not popping up a boy, a male, then his line, and you don't have any other males under that particular male that you're looking at, then his line is extinct. He doesn't have any males coming after him. He's not carrying any YDNA. There's no other sons that he has that's carrying YDNA, unless there's an illegitimate child that pops up, and then bow, there you have it. But
Mhm.
that child has to be a male that carries the Y chromosome.
And I
So
would
that,
hope that
yeah.
that those notes that we leave in the suffix would help the descendant of, say, for theoretically speaking, that someone did have a natural born child, male or female, that's trying to work out how they're related to these DNA matches that aren't making sense to them, that they would see that a line has either gone entirely extinct or the male line has gone extinct, the female line has gone extinct, that would tell them this line is not going to help me answer my question because apparently there are no other living descendants from this line except for lucky me. I'm going to have to go up a generation, take a look at that person's brother, siblings, and then
Hmm.
try to find their living descendants to compare my DNA to. So I'm
Right.
thinking, like I said, George Christian, his son William in the Isle of Man, who on paper did not have any children. His will, he left all of his wealth and property to his siblings. Sorry, not to his siblings, to his cousins. Um, he didn't have any kids, but argument's sake, let's say he had a daughter who went on to marry and has living descendants today. They would come up to George, they would see my little thing, extinct line, going, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to click and take a look at Ewan, William, James, all of the other siblings."
Right. So Jane, I think Jane Mackle, I think we answered your question just now, because Ancestry does the same thing. They have now, a lot of people have that, the beta where they're showing maternal to paternal. If you don't have it yet, you can probably call. I can't call because they got a whole nother thing with me. But try to see if you can be switched to that beta to show your maternal and versus paternal line. Because even my children who have also tested, theirs is popping up who's the maternal, who's the paternal, and everything. So I think we kind of already went through to your question. And Shelly D, you may have come in late, and it's not a dumb question, but just to answer it very quickly again, you said, what makes a female line or a male line extinct? It's just when there are no more female It's no more female to female to female being born, or no more male to male to male being
Mhm.
born.
Is that
That's basically
within,
what makes me think.
like within my immediate family, my brother and I do not have sons. So we are the
Okay.
last males of my two times great grandfather's line. To get
Okay.
the other male Shefty lines, you would need to go to back up to Daniel Henry Sr., look at his sons, and those male lines very much continue to this day. So the DNA itself hasn't died out, but it will die out in my line.
Right. And then, so Mary Todd, she just realized as we were talking, she says, so my Poindexter line might go extinct. To my knowledge, I have one cousin surnamed Poindexter, and he has no children. Then she asked the question. She says, should I encourage him to take the paternal DNA? Which one should I choose for him? The Y37, the Y11, or the big Y? I say you should definitely encourage him to do it. Now, Brian, you tell her which one, because I don't know. I wouldn't, but I do
So
encourage him to get it done.
which is the testing service that she referenced?
She said she didn't say which service. She just said, should she do the Y37, the Y11, or the big Y?
Again, it's going to be what you want to achieve through it. If you just want to know what his YDNA is, I would say that middle one, middle ground, the Y11 probably isn't going to tell you all of the stuff that you want to know, but the middle one will. The super Y one, or whatever it's called, I would only ever use that if I was uncertain about my paternal line, if I really was like a Sheffy, if there was a non-paternity event somewhere in my lineage, if there was like a weirdness going on with my DNA results with the Sheffy family, then I would probably take the big one. But I think the middle package would suit her purposes fine.
Okay, all right. And I'm just kind of going through, and I think, yeah, Shelly is agreeing with you. The Y11,
Mhm.
she's saying the same thing, and Mary Todd said she's going through My Heritage to get it done.
Okay, and
Um,
someone, I think it was Shelley Murphy, also pointed out that family tree DNA also separates your X into your paternal and maternal
yeah,
sides.
yeah.
I think it was just Ancestry was late to the game on that one.
So Shelley asked a really good question. She said, "Does Ancestry let those words in the suffix besides junior still search?" And no, they don't. That's why we use that side, so people can see it, but it not hinder your search or
Mm.
mess up your search. Because Ancestry has changed their search parameters so much. I know you guys remember when you could just put in a possible spelling of the name and you got everything. And right now, Ancestry is almost at the point where you have to be exact on the name in order to pull the person that you want to pull.
Mm. I personally prefer using the suffix box, because people, unfortunately, just, even if you put that there is a comment for people to see, they don't read it. So there is no way that anyone can actually miss it if I put it in the suffix. So I guess I probably use the suffix area in a very untraditional way, or a way that Ancestry wasn't anticipating. I let people know that, DNA has proven a match. If they want me to get a hold of me for me to show them why um, William Holloway is my ancestor, very happy to do that. Um, if paternity is partially confirmed, if DNA is still being worked on to prove stuff, that's the area where I just drop all of those kind of notes. Because again, the genealogy adventures tree is a heavily, heavily trafficked tree.
And Henry Goins, he said, I took the BY, the big Y. I had to graduate my testings. I started with 37, moved to 67, up to 111 before I just went all the way. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't even thought about doing the mtDNA for my mom, but that actually, maybe I should, or maybe I should get my mom to do it, because that actually might help us
Mhm.
find out more information about Miss Hayes.
Well, okay, I'll give you a scenario. So when I was first toying with the idea of doing a TV show, Donya, you know that I wanted to do one based on my DNA results. So I took the equivalent of the big Y, I took my YDNA was 100% examined. It was the biggest test that you could get, and mine was done on a very different kind of platform. It's not like any of the commercial ones. It's called gene-based.
Mhm.
Much, it's kind of more of a scientific service. I also did my mitochondrial DNA, the same thing. I got the biggest package I could because I wanted to know all the places in the globe that my YDNA and my mitochondrial DNA connected me to, all the different tribes and cultures and people. The idea was to do a TV show where I'm living with these people as part of their culture and community for like a month. Thought that would make hilarious TV. It's Brian on a camel going through the Sahara with the Tuareg. There would be comedic moments. I'm just telling you, I'm being honest, I'm keeping it real. There would be some comedic moments in that stuff. But that's the reason why like I said, there was no question about the fact that we were Sheffys. I wanted to know where in the world, one, that DNA originated from, and it gave me kind of the migration pattern from Eastern to Northeastern Africa, and then kind of out along the north before it dropped down on the west. It just connected me. The journey was interesting. Then you could see how it left Africa and settled in all these places in the world. Um, that was incredible. But was that genealogically useful? Probably not. I could have taken a much smaller sample size test, which would have been a lot less expensive, just to prove what the YDNA was, what the YDNA lineage was. So again, when we're doing these tests, we should always think about why we're doing them and the question that we have that we want to have an answer to.
So, Lacrissa Sims, she says, how difficult is it to use mtDNA to follow your female line back? I've been trying to do it with my grandmother's line past her great great grandmother.
Do you want to
I
go
can't
on that
answer.
one? Well,
I
it's
can't answer it because I haven't done it, but I am really sitting here just right now, literally thinking about getting my mom to get the mtDNA done.
I tell you what, can you bring up can you bring up Moses Williams the Elder on my tree? Because I actually put Mariah and Miss Haygood's YDNA
Yeah, because
haplogroup.
we have it because of my mom.
So, like I said, for those of you who've been following us for years, you know that Moses Williams had 45 kids. He had 40 daughters, all born enslaved, who by the time they hit the 1870 census were married women with very different last names. And understanding his wives had two different Y haplogroups. And that's kind of helped us determine which wife people descend from, unless you're like Donya and I and you descend from both of them, because that's
Right.
always fun. But if you're a female, you're only going to have mtDNA from one or the other. And this is what helps us. So, because that's even true for you, Donya. You descend from
Mhm.
both of them, but you carry the mitochondrial DNA of only one of them.
Yeah, I think it's Miss Haygood. I think it's Miss
Mhm.
Haygood. Actually, we haven't figured out which one it is yet.
I thought you knew
That's
you haven't. That's the reason why you wanted to do the YDNA
that's
test,
why I'm
is to
saying.
figure. That's it.
So my mom needs to do that mtDNA. That may make a difference.
Mhm. But if you can
You
scroll down
know.
so people can see that note. See, I leave notes everywhere on everything. Um, okay,
Where
those
is
are all
it?
the Williams. We don't know who they are, but we know that they're part of this story. You may have to just keep scrolling until you get.
Peter. Okay,
Yeah, keep
first name.
going. Yep. I thought I put her
Paternity
haplogroup in there.
to be confirmed. Let me check your comments.
No, I'm gonna have to go back and put that in. Sorry, guys. I was positive that I put that in there because we know what they are. We know the haplogroup for each one of them.
Well, I know we know my mom's, and my mom connects to one of those women. So whatever she connects to both of these women, one of them is the one that my mother shared.
See now, Miss Haygood was my mother's direct female ancestor. So that's why I know what her mtDNA is.
You have Mariah's, and and that's my mother's DNA,
Got it.
L3E182. That's my mom. That's my mom's mtDNA, L3E182.
Cool. So I just need to go in and put in Miss Haygood's. So again, to answer that last question in the kind of final minutes of the show, is you can even put Y haplogroup information in your tree like this, so you know. And if you get any DNA matches on those other services, that will actually let you know what your mitochondrial or your YDNA matches are. This can be a helpful reference to you and to them.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm going to say I haven't.
Go ahead.
I was going to say probably my Y and mitochondria, in terms of using it to identify ancestry, they're probably the two tests that I use the least. But again, the primary purpose in doing them was understanding where that DNA was coming from and the story, the migration story that it was telling.
Right. Well, we are out of time. I do hope we really did do some actual genealogical teaching today. Didn't even realize that was happening.
Yes.
But overall, real quick, Tasha, what is her name? Tasha said, how do you take a YDNA test? Females cannot take YDNA tests. Males can take them because females do not carry the Y chromosome. Only males do. So if you have a male, if you could use your father, he could take the YDNA and he will take it for you. He's the one that you would get to do the YDNA test.
But it must be an unbroken chain of males. There cannot be a
Right.
single female that breaks up that chain, because then that's
Right.
no longer the paternal lineage YDNA.
It's somebody else's. That's right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so we are out of time. I hope you guys enjoyed the little lesson and just, enjoyed the conversation. And I hope you got something from it too. And just remember, teach your kids, show them why we are important. Show them what it is that we did. That's what genealogy does. And it opened up a whole nother life for me. And I want it for everybody. I really, really do. I really do.
And again, as we sign off, think about different ways. You don't even have to put it in your tree. With your research notes, think of different ways that you can note which lines have gone extinct, the ways that they've gone extinct, whether it's entirely, whether it's the female line, whether it's the male line. Think about incorporating that practice in your work, and think about ways of memorializing and celebrating, I don't want to say the end of that line, but the existence of that line up to the point where it ended.
Right.
So we really are out of time. So
we are.
Check our site to see what the next week's show is going to be. Until then, 4:00 p.m. Sunday, we will see you right here. I'm Brian.
And I'm Donya. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye.